Hey guys, how's it going? I'm coming on today. Happy Tuesday to everyone. So I have been getting over this horrendous cold, but the show must go on. So I'm going to be doing a live, if not tonight, maybe tomorrow night. I want to break my live virginity, and we're going to be talking about ascension. We're going to be talking about what we're going through. We're going to be talking about topics like this that I'm bringing up today. So look out for that. I'm going to be posting that, and if you want to join me, it's probably going to be tonight, tomorrow, the next, but it's going to be at night, and we're just going to have a chat and get to know each other and talk about what's good. But today I'm going to be talking about a topic that took me many years to figure out, and I hope I can help you, because some of these things can go on for a period of your time in life, or they could take your whole lifetime, or they can even be called what we would call generational. So I'm talking about karmic loops, karmic cycles, and generational curses. And they all have the same MO. They all have the same kind of structures. So if you can kind of learn how to identify them and then also eliminate them, it's very helpful, because what you can do, instead of being in another karmic cycle, you can be in a dharmic cycle, which is more of prosperity and growth of self. So I hope this helps. So what you'll notice with all three of these, or at least for the karmic loops and cycles, you can only notice that within your own life at first. The generational comes after you've broken it for yourself, okay? So the thing is that you'll be in this stagnant type of energy. It tends to be around this relationships in your life. It could be friends, family, or your partners. And you'll notice that this stagnant energy is where you always feel like you're getting to a plateau. A good identifier of that you have just gone through a karmic cycle, or you're presently in a karmic cycle, is this question. Why does this keep happening to me? Okay? You sit at the end of every poor relationship, or you sit at the end of every time you've been cheap-shotted or scapegoated, and you're like, why does this keep happening to me? The reason being is most likely you're in a karmic loop or a karmic cycle, okay? So why I say it's family, friends, and partners, like I've said before, let's just say your life is a big old play, okay? And your family, your friends, and your partners in your life, or even others, are characters in this play, okay? And these karmic characters are designed and blueprinted and agreed upon when you come into this life, because these characters are designed to do things to you so that you learn a lesson. Because the whole life is about you, okay? So what they tend to do, if they are karmic, is they start to challenge things in your self-worth, okay? So your self-worth is always being challenged. They tend to make you feel small. They belittle you. They minimize your worth. And the thing is that why it's so hard to identify is because they are stationed in sometimes these very important roles of a family, a friend, a partner, okay? Sometimes the partners are easier to get rid of, because you're like, oh, I brought you into my life, I can excommunicate you out of my life. Same as friends, but sometimes that gets hard because you've had them for so long, or you've been through things with them. And sometimes it's not like they're going to tell you directly, like, oh, I'm destroying your self-worth. And no, they're subtle, they take time to recognize, but if you notice, they always tend to circulate around their self-worth. And another way you can identify this is like with the family, friends, another version of this, or how it could be played out, is that you start to realize that you yourself start using crutches to handle or to deal with the karmic cycle you're in. So sometimes, instead of being small, belittled, and minimized and getting smaller, that would be what I would call the sacrificial lamb matrix, or the when people start to feel like they have to what's the word? Like they sacrifice themselves, but they also martyr themselves. Sometimes people are in these martyring style karmic cycles. And then there's another version where it's like they're not allowing others to see that they're small. And the way they do this is by compensating with things like money, vices, sex, and power. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say, for example, you're the type of person that has groups of friends or family or partners only because you have money. Only because you pay for things, only because you look flashy, only because you can help others out. So you notice that all the relationships coming into your life are kind of stemmed all around the fact that you are someone who has money. You've made it your mission to go make money so you could preserve these karmic relationships. And that's what I'm trying to say. That's why it takes a discerning mind to realize if you're in one, okay? The next one might be vices, okay? So let's say, for example, you are not happy, and let's say, like I said, you're not showing that you're small. You may feel minimized, belittled in your relationships, but you suffer through them because you're in that. You might use vices like cocaine, alcohol, cigarettes, etc., just to handle what you're going through. And the thing is, too, is that you'll notice that those vices sometimes are connected to the family, friends, and partners. That's what unites you in a codependent relationship sometimes, are these vices. So it's a crutch in a sense. And these are all crutches that I'm saying that you may be using because you have these karmic characters in your life. Another thing could be sex. Let's say, for example, and I'm just using women. Please, women, don't get mad at me, but there are women out there that use their sexual prowess to compensate for the lack thereof. They use the sexual prowess to over or find power with others because they feel minimized, unworthy, and belittled. So let's say, for example, somebody just looks at this woman as a sexual creature versus what she has going on upstairs, or what she has in her heart, or what she could really put forth. She puts herself in a situation where she just makes her a sexualized entity, a sexualized being, just to afford herself these karmic relationships, just to have them in her life. And this can work for men too. Like, don't get me wrong, guys get into the player mode. They get egged on by their friends that, oh, you're a player, oh, you're a player. But here's the thing, you start having sex with all these people and you're like, oh yeah, you're debonair, you're this to all those people. But really at home you're lonely because you haven't really met anyone worth cultivating a loving relationship with, because you've created this character for your friends that are always minimizing you or making you feel a certain way, that's who you should be. So this does work for men as well. And what I will say too is power, because the thing is that some people just gravitate towards those that have power. Now the thing is, you could have power, let's say in your work, you could be like the manager or the CEO, but you could still be suffering because you might be really great at business and have all these people suck up to you because you're the CEO. But when you take away that title, do you truly know if those people would still love you? And that's what I mean. Sometimes we gravitate towards power to ensure that we won't be belittled, we won't be minimized, but that we can kind of band-aid our self-worth. Now, the thing that I'm saying with a karmic cycle is that even though you're a character playing out a role in this world, you don't realize that you have to go to your little child self when you're at home, you know, crying to yourself why certain people, certain places, certain things are not validating you or making your self-worth feel whole. It's because most likely you're in a karmic loop. No matter how great you are, how much money you have, how much money you don't have, the karmic cycle is intrinsically for your learning. So don't ever look to the outward, look to the inward to figure these things out. So the thing is that should you want to move on to a dharmic lesson versus a karmic lesson, because the thing is that you'll notice that every time you may find that this cycle ends, like let's say you're with a partner or friends or family that treats you in a belittling way, and you don't recognize that cycle can go on your entire life. You allow the character to belittle you your entire life. So you go out of that life never learning the self-worth lesson. You can stay in that karmic cycle your entire life. You can then bring it into the next life. And that's how these generational curses occur. Because the thing is that your self-worth wasn't ever figured out. Your children see that you didn't find self-worthiness. It carries into their life. Then they propagate that into their children and so forth. That characteristic, that lesson doesn't get learned, and it gets carried through the ages. Because, like, I'll give you an example, and this is a general example, but this is how I can explain this. Let's say, for example, your parents are alcoholics, or your parents drink, or your parents do vices, or your parents are all about money, whatever the case may be, that they crutch with throughout their life. They teach the child, oh, you know, you need money to be powerful, you need money to make friends, you need money to live a happy life. They put in this rhetoric in the child. The same as the child who watches their parents grow up drinking all the time to cope with their life, with their crutching their life. That child equates, oh, to live a life holy is to drink. These ideas get put into the children of those suffering in a karmic cycle that the child now sees. So the thing is that you yourself want to break these, not only for yourself, but for the generations ahead. And let's say, for example, if it is alcoholism, if you notice that you, let's say, are a child of an alcoholic and you stop drinking, now your children are not going to see you depending on alcohol, so therefore they might not be as dependent. You've broken that cycle, so your next generation may not be all crutching vices and alcoholism in the future. So that's just an example of what I'm saying. What you'll notice is that if you should break these cycles, if you notice them, and how do you notice them? You recognize that it's going on. You recognize the theme. You recognize the same characters keep repeating back into your life. So you recognize it, and the best thing to do is that once you've recognized it, eliminate these characters, okay? I don't care if they're your mom. I don't care if they're your dad. I don't care if they're your, you know, the priest. I don't care who they are in your life. You eliminate them. And I'm not saying like you're like, oh, get out of here, get out of my life. No, you create situations where these people cannot get into your energy. They cannot get into your, you know, physical form as least as possible, if not totally, so that your sense of mind and self is aware. And once you do recognize it and you eliminate it, you notice that you start to change and grow. And what's interesting about this change and grow period is that as you elevate in your consciousness and your awareness, and your, let's say, your energy field becomes more pronounced and you resonate at a higher frequency, you'll notice that these same partners, friends, and family that were part of that karmic cycle just seem to disappear. They don't really try to call you as much. They don't really try to get in your way. And if they do come and see you, they don't really bring up all those smaller feelings of self-worth. You'll notice that that's a gravitational shift that occurs once you've broken out of these cycles. So the thing is that ultimately what it is, what the ultimate goal is that you end up standing up for yourself in all of these scenarios. Now, I'm going to give you my own version so that you guys can understand what I mean. Because I realized this in my own life, and it happens to be that I was always challenged in the way of love. You guys may know already, I've talked about this before, that I have had some pretty pitiful male figures in my life. And I realized this only through my ex. I'm almost 40 years old, so that means I've been living in this cycle for a very long time. And I am sorry to say, but my self-worth struggle or my self-worth karmic cycle started with my father. He was always a man who repressed emotion, okay? He was always a man who belittled me. He was always a man that made me feel like worthiness came from producing, okay? So I noticed my first boyfriend, my first husband, all the boyfriends after, and even my ex, which was the 2.0 version, which I'll honestly say, I would say I've dealt with narcissism several times in my life. And unfortunately, I started with one at the beginning. And as I move through my life, I'm always dealing with this, because you have to understand the father or mother of anybody's life, provided you do have them, and I'm sorry if you don't, but if you do, they are the archetypes of what you find to be your safety or your safe haven, or should be your safe haven in your life. So if you notice that, for example, with me, because my father always made me feel like I had to produce, I had to be number one, I had to be giving all the time to obtain love, right? It carried in every single one of my relationships, and that's what I mean. The characters will change, the scenery will change, but the underlying self-worth issue will always be at hand. These characters, for me, it was my father and my significant boyfriends and loves of my life that kept putting me in this belittled feeling, that kept making me feel like I was not worthy of love. That was the ultimate theme. I was unworthy of love because I did not love myself. How I learned to love myself was to recognize that it was happening, to eliminate the characters in my life, and to change and to grow. And you have to understand that, no, I did not eliminate my father, but my father went through my life and then kind of dissipated at a certain age when I started standing up for myself. My first boyfriend, my first husband, they ran their karmic, because the thing is, you have to understand, they are also contracted, because you'll be with one karmic cycle and then it'll end. Then you'll jump into either a dharmic cycle or a karmic cycle again, depending on if you learned or not. Because you're always given that person and that time to learn the lesson. And then there's like a kind of like assessment at the end of the relationship. And if those patterns reemerge within yourself, if you still haven't learned to love yourself, you're going to go right back into another karmic cycle. It could be 7 years, 3 years, 1 year. But you'll notice that all the characters, like for me, I didn't learn until the very end with the 2.0. When I was at my bottom and I was like, you know what, I recognize this now. Ding, 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 ding. These people were all doing the same thing. They were all playing out the same role in a different scenario. So the thing was is that I had to eliminate them, find my self-empowerment. And once I moved and found that self-empowerment, and it meant fighting for that authentic self-shift, meaning like I'm actually moving into who I truly am, I started to notice other karmics around. So once you realize the theme that your karmic patterns or your karmic persons were trying to achieve in your life, you can identify the red flags for such karmics again. So let's say, for example, I meet another man who's belittling me. I meet another man that's kind of restraining his emotion. Let's say I meet another man that isn't being upfront and honest and making me feel like I got to work hard for his love. I realize, ding, 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 karmic partner. And I shift and I move on. You have to do this pivot. You have to do this shift, because once you've learned the lesson, you're not going to go back into another sad karmic lesson. So that works for loops. Loops tend to be even smaller fragments of time. Sometimes they're smaller versions of karmic lesson, but they're shorter. Cycles, like I said, could be your whole lifetime and go into the next lifetime. And then that's when it moves into the generational, or what they call a generational curse. Or let's just call it a generational karmic cycle. And the thing is that this is all happening as these characters are playing out in your life. So once you go into a dharmic cycle, most likely if you just keep producing more authenticity within a dharmic cycle, you'll move into another dharmic cycle with more interesting, greater players. You'll go to the next cycle with even the most intrinsic players. And you'll notice that the fruitfulness of your life totally cultivates and shifts and blooms and blossoms because you've moved out of these cycles. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening. If you do like what I'm saying, please like, please share, please subscribe. It is a free gesture. I don't ask for money. I just ask for your love. So please show me how you love me back. And if you do want to see me, I'm going to be doing, like I said, my live either tonight, tomorrow, or I don't know about today. I'm still a little nasally, but I'm also a little, timid. It is going to be my first one, so I'm breaking my proverbial live virginity. But we're going to be talking about ascension. We're going to be talking about the challenges. We're going to be getting to know each other. And if you have any questions, get them ready, because I'm not saying I know everything, but I do know a lot about what I do know. So have a good one, guys. Love you lots.